Ali Raso, MP the Honorable Peter Lochakapong, MP the Honorable Brighton Yegon Leonard, the Honorable Anne Wanjiko Muratha, the Honorable Charity Kadhambi Chepkwony, the Honorable Jerusha Momanyi Mongina, the Honorable Elisha Odhiambo Ochieng, the Honorable Ruth Busia Adhiambo Odinga, the Honorable Robert Basil Ngui, the Honorable Beatrice Elachi MP, the Honorable Paul Abor MP, the Honorable Elsie Mohanda Busihile MP. Will as many as of this opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it, honorable members.
Order number 11, motion, appointment of members to the Committee of Powers and Privileges.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to move that pursuant to the provisions of Section 15(1)(a)(2) of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act 2017 and Standing Order 175(3), this House approves the appointment of the following members to the Powers and Privileges Committee, in addition to the one specified under paragraph 1A1 of the said Act. Honorable Mureu Wakili Edward MP, Honorable Jane Kihara OGW MP, Honorable Samuel Moroto Chumel MP, Honorable Festus Mwangi Kionjori MP, Honorable Philip Kagushia Gishohi MP, Honorable Rai Samuel Gonzi MP, Honorable Joseph Lekuton MP, the Honorable Fabian Chule Muli MP, the Honorable Sabina Wanjiro Shege MP, the Honorable Mboko Mishi Juma Hamisi MP, the Honorable Jessica Nduku Mbalu Kiko MP, the Honorable James Oyo, that should be Koyo Onyango. There is a mistyping on Oyo's name. It's Koyo Onyango MP. The Honorable John Okano Buire MP and the Honorable Rose Museo Mumo MP. As I had stated earlier, honorable members, that again is a sessional committee and the same renewal of the term, and has very seasoned members, as you note, members who are serving 5 terms, 4 terms, 3 terms, 2 terms, and at least 2 members who are serving their first term, for them to be able to learn from the older members on what the Committee of Powers and Privileges. That is a very important committee, also chaired by the Speaker himself. It's the only other committee other than the House Business Committee that the Speaker chairs. And therefore, I want to ask the member for Gatundu South, the Honorable Gigi Kagombe, to second.
Honorable Speaker, I read to second this committee as constituted because it's a very important committee that looks into the breaches of powers and privileges of members of parliament, and I therefore second the committee as constituted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, I now propose the question that pursuant to provisions of Section 15(1)(a)(2) of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act 2017 and Standing Order 117(3), this House approves the appointment of the following members to the Powers and Privileges Committee, in addition to the one specified under paragraph 1A, Roman 1 of the said Act. 1. The Honorable Muriu Wakili Edward MP, the Honorable Jane Keara OGH MP, the Honorable Samuel Moroto Chumel MP, the Honorable Festus Mwangi Kiunjuri MP, the Honorable John Philip Kagushia Gichohi MP, the Honorable Rai Samuel Gozi MP, the Honorable Joseph Lekuton MP, the Honorable Fabian Chule Muli MP, the Honorable Sabina Wanjiro Chege MP, the Honorable Mishimboko Juma Hamisi MP, the Honorable Jessica Nduko Mbalu Kiko MP, the Honorable James Koyo Onyango MP, the Honorable John Okano Buire MP, and the Honorable Rose Museo MP. Honorable members, may I put the question? Okay, so therefore I go on to put the question. I therefore put the question that pursuant to provisions of Standing Orders 15(1)(a)(2) of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act 2017 and Standing Orders 117(3), this House approves the appointment of the following members to the Powers and Privileges Committee, in addition to the one specified under paragraph 1A, Roman 1 of the said Act. 1. The Honorable Muiru Wakili MP, The Honorable Jane Kiara OGH MP. The Honorable Samuel Moroto Chumel MP. The Honorable Festus Mwangi Kiunjuri MP. The Honorable John Philip Kagushia Gishoi MP. The Honorable Rai Samuel Ngozi MP. The Honorable Joseph Lekuton MP. The Honorable Fabian Chule Muli MP. The Honorable Sabina Wanjiro Shege MP. The Honorable Mboko Mishi Juma Kamisi MP. The Honorable Jessica Nduku Mbalu Kiko MP. The Honorable James Koyo Onyango MP. The Honorable John Okano Mbwire MP. And the Honorable Rose Museo MP. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And will as many of the contrary opinions say nay? The ayes have it, honorable members. Next order.
Order number 12, motion. Further changes to the membership of various committees.
Of majority.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I beg to move that further to the resolutions of the House of Thursday, October 27, 2022, and Wednesday, November 9, 2022, appointing members into various committees, and pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 173, this House further approves the appointment of the following members to the respective committees as specified hereunder. A, under departmental committees in sports and culture, the Honorable Shege Njuguna MP to replace Chumuel Samuel Moroto MP. 2, under regional development, the Honorable Deko Baro Mohammed MP to replace Honorable Kahugu Eric Mwangi MP. B, under financial audit and money-related committees, 1, public debt and privatization, the Honorable Shege Njuguna to replace the Honorable Kahugu Eric Mwangi MP. Under special funds accounts committee, the Honorable Kahugu Eric Mwangi MP to replace the Honorable Gishuki Edwin Mogo MP. C, under other select committees, the Committee on Delegated Legislation, the Honorable Deko Baro Mohammed MP to replace the Honorable Rai Samuel Gonzi MP. Honorable Speaker, just for clarity, these changes are occasioned is actually accommodating the 2 new members who were sworn in at the beginning of this session. You know, Honorable Speaker, all our standing orders require that all members of parliament must sit at least in one committee. And the selections committee and the House leadership on both sides has endeavored to ensure that actually all members of parliament are in at least one committee. And no member of parliament, as per the standing orders, sits in not more than 2 departmental committees. You therefore find there are members, Honorable Speaker, because again, we could not constitute committees without the requisite numbers. Those committees that sit 15 members, we had to fill members, so we put some members in more than 2 committees, departmental and a select. We put some into departmental committees and some into select committees to be able to hold the 2 positions of the 2 members, the member for Kandara and the member for Garissa Township, whose elections were held early in January, and the former members of parliament had been appointed to cabinet. Therefore, all we are doing is to accommodate these 2 members, the member for Kandara, the Honorable Shege Njuguna, and the Honorable Deko Baro Mohammed, the member for Garissa Township, for them to now embark on the work of committees. And I'm glad that the Right Honorable Speaker was very magnanimous during the induction to committees. He did allow these members to attend the induction sessions in Mombasa and be inducted into the business of committees, and we will now afford them the opportunity to be able to interact in committees. And we have ensured that they both serve in both a departmental committee and a select committee. With that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and request my sister, the Honorable Naomi Wako, to second.
Madam Speaker, I stand to second. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. I now propose the question that further to the resolutions of the House on Thursday, October 27th, 2022, and Wednesday, November 9th, 2022, appointing members into various departmental committees, and pursuant to provisions of Standing Orders 173. This House further approves the appointment of the following members to respective committees as specified hereunder. A, departmental committees: 1, sports and culture, the Honorable Chege Njuguna MP to replace the Honorable Chumel Samuel Moroto MP. 2, regional development, the Honorable Dekor Barrow Mohammed MP to replace the Honorable Kahugu Eric Mwangi MP. B, financial audit and money-related committees. 1, public debt and privatization, the Honorable Chege Njuguna MP to replace the Honorable Kahugu Eric Mwangi MP. 2, special funds committees, the Honorable Kahugu Eric Mwangi MP to replace the Honorable Geshoke Edwin Mugo. C, other select committees, Committee on Delegated Legislation, the Honorable Dekor Barrow Mohammed MP to replace the Honorable Rai Samuel Gozi. Honorable members, do I put the question? Honorable members, I put the question. Is it the mood of the House that I put the question? So it is the mood of the House that I put the question. And I therefore put the question that pursuant to resolutions of the House on Thursday, 27th, 2022, and Wednesday, November 9th, 2022, appointing members into various committees and pursuant to provisions of Standing Order 173. This House further approves the appointment of the following members to the respective committees as specified hereunder. A, departmental committees, sports and culture, the Honorable Chege Njuguna MP to replace the Honorable Chumel Samuel Moroto MP. 2, the regional development committee, the Honorable Dekor Barrow Mohammed MP to replace the Honorable Kahugu Eric Mwangi MP. B, financial audit and money-related committees. 1, public debt and privatization, the Honorable Chege Njuguna MP to replace the Honorable Kahugu Eric Mwangi MP. 2, special funds accounts committee, the Honorable Kahugu Eric Mwangi MP to replace the Honorable Gishuki Edwin Mugo MP. And C, other select committees, the Honorable, I would like to take that again, Honorable members, select committees. Committee on Delegated Legislation, the Honorable Dekor Barrow Mohammed MP to replace the Honorable Rai Samuel Gozi. Honorable members, will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Thank you, honorable members. What is out of order? The Honorable Junet Mohammed.
Madam Speaker, it's only that I'm speaking now after the facts. But first, I want to congratulate the new members, Honorable Deko and the other member who have gotten their new committees. Madam Speaker, I want to bring something because I'm a member of the selection committee that is chaired by the majority leader, Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah. Madam Speaker, I must bring this matter out because this is when we are discussing this matter on the floor of the House, and I think it must go on record. Madam Speaker, yesterday in our selection committee, if you look at the motion that we have just passed, and you look at the list that has just been passed, and the names that have just been passed is a list that consists only on from the majority side. There is no single change from the minority side. But Madam Speaker, the minority side had their own changes to do. And we were not punishing anyone. We wanted to reorganize our committees so that they can become more effective. Because if you want to punish anyone, you will de-whip him. And the de-whipping is done under Article 174, Standing Order 174. But this one we wanted to reorganize for members who are 3 committees, members who are 4 committees, members who are more than 2 committees, so that members can effectively serve in 1 committee or 2 committees maximum. Madam Speaker, we were denied to have that chance. Yesterday, for the first time in the history of this country, of this parliament, Madam Speaker, we almost went to a voting in the selection committee, where the majority blocked the minority from managing their committees, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if this House consists of the majority side and the minority side, if the minority cannot manage their side and they have to be managed by the majority side, Madam Speaker, if that is not capture of parliament, what is capture of parliament, Madam Speaker? If I have the office of the whip and my leader here is the minority leader, cannot do any effective changes like what's happening now in the Senate, Madam Speaker, why are we in office? Why is Parliament facilitating us? Why don't we close those offices and then we give the keys to the majority leader and the clerk? They can run the Parliament the way than the Speaker. Madam Speaker, especially the majority leader who is the chairman of that committee. Madam Speaker, what has happened yesterday will remain in the history of this Parliament and will be remembered as the worst day a committee of Parliament made a decision in this country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what do we do with those committees now? There are members who are coming to our offices every day who have one committee, and there are members who have 3 committees. So we wanted to rationalize, and the majority now wants to run the minority side. How are we going to allow that to happen, Madam Speaker? That is a declaration of war in this House, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, if that matter is not arrested by the leadership of this House, the consequences will be dire. So, Madam Speaker, I want to urge the majority leader, now that he is the chairman of the selection committee, he is the majority leader, to show leadership so that this House can run in the manner that is envisaged in the standing orders and the Constitution, where we have the majority side and we have the minority side. And people have joined those coalitions by choice. Nobody was forced. So if you want to get your committee from the majority side, go and join the majority side and get your committee. The committees were shared in accordance with the proportional representation of members in this House, Madam Speaker. Members went out on August 28th, campaigned, and they were elected from their constituencies to come and represent their people. So, Madam Speaker, as minority side, I want to register here that our rights as minority guaranteed under standing order have been trampled on yesterday, Madam Speaker, and the way we are supposed to run the minority side cannot be dictated by the majority side. That's for a fact. Neither can we dictate how the majority side should be run by the majority leadership. So, Madam Speaker, our proposal for rationalizing our sides of the committee was yesterday rejected through voting. We don't want to, we have a serious crisis outside Parliament. If the members wish, we bring that crisis also inside here, well and good. We know how to do it best. From 2013 to 2017 to all the time we have been doing it, we know how to do it. We have done freebies here. We have made Uhuru Kenyatta cannot speak in this House one time. We can repeat the same, but we don't want to go that direction. We want to have a direction where we show leadership, and I urge the majority leader to take leadership and make sure our committees are brought here without any fail, and majority should not have a say in how we run our committee. If that demand is not met, I'm issuing here notice that the consequences will be there in 14 days.
Well, obviously, honorable members, the first opportunity goes to the majority leader, who is the chair. So the floor is yours, majority leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is good that the minority whip has raised that very pertinent issue, because committees of this House, including the selections committee that I chair, and it's the only committee that I chair and I sit in other than the House Business Committee, where I attend as a member under the chairmanship of the Speaker. But the selections committee, I chair. And I chaired the meeting yesterday evening from about 5 p.m. to around 7 p.m. And it is true that there was a list that came from the minority, which members felt, first, it was not part of the circulated agenda for the meeting, because the agenda circulated, I think, from the 27th of this month, had 2 agendas, which was approval of the membership to the 2 sessional committees, the Powers and Privileges Committee and the Members' Welfare Committee, and placement of the 2 new members, the Honorable Shege and the Honorable Major Deko. And when the leader of minority introduced the list of changes under AOB, we had a spirited engagement for close to an hour on whether first we should admit it such substantive business as AOB. And eventually we agreed by consensus that we should admit that business under AOB. Therefore, it is not true that the majority in any way stopped that business from being transacted. We did discuss the list. including myself and the Honorable Leader of Minority, first reading out the list of the members being moved from what committee to what committee. And members had varied opinion to an extent where one of the members, and I'm glad the Honorable KJ is in the house, because he's the one who moved the motion that we take a vote. Because where you don't agree on anything by consensus, then the vote decides. And before we voted, the leader, the minority whip, is the one actually who offered to withdraw the list of changes because he saw the sense in building consensus. And why are we seeking consensus, Honorable Speaker? I said the committees sit on behalf of plenary. We could come and sit, the 349 of us, and place members in committees. But you know that would be a marketplace and it cannot work. Therefore, when a committee sits, and when you are a chair of a committee, and I know the Honorable Junet has never chaired any committee for the last 12 years he has been in this house, but I have been the chair of the most important committee, the Budget and Appropriations Committee, where you have to give and take. I have told the Honorable Junet and the Honorable Pio, and I believe in consensus building. I believe in people engaging and arriving at fair engagement and fair results. And therefore, I want to treat a member of the minority party from whichever party, whether you're in Jubilee, whether you're in ODM, whether you're in Wiper, as a member of parliament. And where the Honorable Nyikal's rights, I feel his rights are being infringed by the Honorable Junet, I will stand up to be counted to protect the rights of Honorable Nyikal to be a member of any committee. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I did implore from last week on the minority that other than doing changes in a very sectarian manner and in a very underhand manner by sneaking in at least the last minute through the clerk's office, let us engage as we did when we were forming these committees. Let us have changes from the majority. Because even the majority may desire to, and we desire to make changes. These members in the majority, on the majority side will tell you there are some who want to sit in other committees. There are members who are appointed to some committees. They have never attended a single meeting. And I did commit as a chair of the selections committee that unlike in the two previous assemblies where I have sat, where the selections committee only sat once at the beginning of every session, we intend to have regular meetings of the selections committee to review the work of committees and the work members are engaging on in committees, so that we preempt the situation where members are placed into committees, they appear before a committee, sign, run to the next committee, sign, and probably run to a third committee and sit for 30 minutes. And you offer no meaningful engagement, and you don't give value to that committee. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, it is in that endeavor to ensure, one, there is fairness. Because I do not want to chair a committee where the Honorable Jerusha Momanyi feels that her rights were infringed on. She had no notice that she was being moved from one committee to the other. She has not been given an opportunity by the whip or the minority leader or the majority leader or the majority whip. Therefore, it's only in the pursuit of fairness, and maybe it could be my weakness to try to be fair to everybody, but not to control in any way the minority side. And I want to be on record. I have no business running the minority side. When you seek to be guided, please look for the people taking you to Jivanji, not Kimani Ichung'wa. I will guide you in the selections committee. Probably why the Honorable Junet is saying that nobody has been forced into their coalition. And indeed, you remember even last year, before elections, we were inviting people to the coalition of the willing, the Kenya Kwanza coalition. There is no secret that the Azimio coalition party was not a coalition of the willing. It was a coalition of coercion and intimidation by the Handshake brothers. we are not in the last regime, Honorable Junet, where anybody with equal opportunity to enjoy their rights and privileges as members of parliament. And there will be no animal that will be more equal than the other, as the case is in Azimio, where the Honorable Junet sits and decides who will sit in a committee by himself without engaging and without consultation with members of his coalition. Therefore, it is actually in bad faith, Honorable Speaker, for the Honorable Junet to be raising this issue, knowing we had engaged with him one-on-one.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, I'll give two opportunities. One on my left to the Honorable Junet, because he has been mentioned, and on this side, I'll give the Honorable John Waweru.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I want to tell the majority leader.
Order, honorable members.
I
would like the Honorable Junet to be heard in silence, honorable members.
Madam Speaker, I want to tell the majority leader and to remind him that this House has majority and minority. The majority leader behaves as though we are under the KANU days, when we were being led by the majority leader only in this House. Shame on him, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what is this fairness? What is this fairness he's talking about when his own members are suffering in his own coalition and is unable to deal with them? Madam Speaker, what is this fairness he's talking about? His own members have no CDF, he's in government. His own members have no bursary, he's in government. His own members have nothing to tell their constituencies, he's in government. Madam Speaker, if democracy is supposed to be allowed to mature in this country, what the majority leader has just said here should not be on record of this parliament, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, how can he say he's the one who can be fair to Jerusha Momanyi? When has her coalition been unfair to her? When? Madam Speaker, when? Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, people like now, what is her name? Mheshimiwa Korere is saying, will tell you, if she wants to join another coalition, nobody's holding her back. She can go tomorrow morning. But if you are in our coalition, you must adhere to the rules and regulations of this coalition, Madam Speaker. And this parliament is going to generate to chaos now, the way I'm seeing. Madam Speaker, we will not allow.
You have made your point, Honorable Junet. And because the Honorable Kiari has been mentioned, and you also mentioned the Honorable Sarah Korere, I feel that it is fair. I will give a chance. Order. Order, honorable members. I will give a chance to the Honorable John Waweru. Please proceed, Honorable John Kier.
Madam Speaker, I do believe that in this House we are able to debate and debate. Madam Speaker, I believe that in this House we are able to debate and debate rationally, Madam Speaker. And as you rightly said, Madam Speaker, I was in that meeting. And I want to tell this House authoritatively, Madam Speaker, that what has been presented by the majority leader is properly before this House. The committee applied itself, and in the best way that they could, because what is being debated here by the leader, the majority whip, actually appeared before the committee, and procedurally, Madam Speaker, we had to pause the meeting to actually accommodate the list that they wanted to bring to the committee, Madam Speaker. In fact, to resolve the impasse, I had to call, to implore the chairman to actually call the committee, the matter to a vote. But more importantly, Madam Speaker, I want to associate myself with the words of the majority leader, that the majority side has no business managing the minority side. In fact, what is happening, Madam Speaker, is natural. Last year, when we were saying that this coalition is coercing people into Azimio, when we were saying that this coalition is bullying people into Azimio, when we were saying that this coalition is intimidating people into Azimio, we meant exactly what we did. And no amount of shouting from Honorable Millie will stop me from saying that there shall be a stampede out of Azimio, because it is not a coalition of the willing. People are running out of Azimio because they are seeing the injustices in that coalition. The Wiper Party is crying in Azimio. The Wiper Party has been conned from the time this Azimio was called. It changed into NASA, and it is now Azimio, and it is still conning Wiper. The reason why you see the opposition side, the minority side silent, is because there are big brothers in the Azimio who have been bullying other junior members in that coalition, Madam Speaker. But I need to say, Madam Speaker, that as you well said, this is a house of debate. If we want maandamano we can take to Jacaranda, we can take it to Jivanji, we can take maandamano to Kamukunji, but this house shall remain the house of sober debate where ideas shall be weighed by their merit, not by how loud you shout on the floor of the house. Madam Speaker, I want to say that the majority side has presented its list. The minority side has been unable to even agree on what changes they want in these committees. So if they want to abscond, Madam Speaker, it is their right to abscond even the sittings, Madam Speaker. But Azimio shall face a massive stampede of members, of coalition members and parties running away from Azimio. The stampede is
point. Honorable members, the last opportunity, honorable members, will go to the Honorable Sarah Korere.
Speaker, naomba nikushukuru. Na Mheshimiwa Speaker, wahenga wanasema mficha uchi hazai. Na Mheshimiwa Speaker, kinara wa walio wachache alipozungumza hapa alisema kwa kimombo kwamba wanataka kuchukua hatua za kinidhamu. Mheshimiwa Speaker, utasikiza na amesema. Na Mheshimiwa Speaker, mimi nataka kusema wakati Mheshimiwa Junet anasema kwamba wale wanataka kwenda kuchukua nafasi zao Kenya Kwanza waende, nataka nimpashe hatuendi. Na kama wako na njia ya kutupeleka, watafute tingatinga watupeleke. Tutakaa kwenye hii mrengo. Manake Mheshimiwa Speaker, ni aibu kwamba ndugu zetu ambaye ni kinara wa wachache hawana ile uvumilivu wa kusikiza mawaidha ambaye inatofautiana na yao. Na Mheshimiwa Speaker, kwa Kiingereza wanaita intolerance. Na Mheshimiwa Speaker, kila mmoja aliye katika nyumba hii alichaguliwa, alitumia mali zake, alitumia akili, alitumia wakati kutafuta kura, kujitafutia na kutafutia ule mrengo. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Speaker, tunapofika hapa alafu watu wanaanza kuhunjumu wengine, ati sasa watu wakienda kukutana na rais wa Kenya, na Kenya kuna rais mmoja, hakuna wa pili, ati unaomba ruhusa. Hiyo ni mamlaka ya imla, mbaya zaidi ya ile imla tulijua katika nchi. Mheshimiwa Speaker, na Mheshimiwa Speaker, hatuwezi omba ruhusa.
Let the Honorable Sarah Korere be heard in silence, just the way the other honorable members have been heard. You have the floor, Honorable Sarah Korere.
Na Mheshimiwa Speaker, navyoelewa mimi ni kwamba kila mheshimiwa katika nyumba hii ako na wajibu wa kuhakikisha kwamba serikali imewajibika, awe wa upande ile ama wa upande hii. Kwa hivyo mimi nashindwa kizaazaa ambaye ndugu wetu kiongozi ama kinara walio wachache anataka kulete kisiri ni cha nini haswa. Na iwapo iko basi wasifanye kisiri, walete kinagaubaga, manake chama ambaye mimi nasimamia, na unajua Waswahili wanasema paka akiondoka panya utawala. Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta alipoondoka Jubilee, kwa sasa hivi mimi ndio party leader nashikilia. Na kama wana ODM wanataka kuzungumza, wazungumze na mimi. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Speaker, naomba kinara wa wengi alinde uhuru wa bunge hii na alinde haki ya wabunge hapa na washirikiane na ndugu wetu hapa na waashe maneno ya Jivanji. Wako katika nyumba hii waseme ile wanataka.
Honorable members, first of all, the matter that we are discussing has already been, a decision has already been made. Has already been made. And I would like to address the Honorable Junet. You have been a leader in this house. This is your third term in the house. Clearly, order, Honorable Nyikal. Order, Honorable Nyikal. Order. Order, Honorable Nyikal. There are processes, honorable members, there are processes that happen based on standing order number 1, from standing order number 172, 173, through to 175. To 175. Clearly, this matter has gone through processes and it was brought to the House. And a decision has been made. So, honorable members, I would like to order that we move to the next order. Next order. Next order.
Order number 13, motion. General debate on the proposal to Parliament to consider amending the Constitution and the standing orders. Resumption of debate.
Order, honorable members. Order, honorable Nyikal. Please, honorable Nyikal, I order that you go back to your seat.
Will I clear my name?
First of all, honorable Nyikal, you will go back to your seat.
Will I clear my name? I'm going back, but will I clear my name?
Please proceed to your seat, honorable Nyikal.
I will clear my name. If I don't, I'll come. Don't ever do that.
Honorable members, the next order is a resumption of debate. Honorable members, we already moved to the next order, which is resumption of debate. And in regard to that, honorable members, I will give the opportunity to Honorable Kuria Kimani, member for Molo.
Thank you, Honorable
I gave
Speaker.
an opportunity to the member for Molo, the Honorable Kuria Kimani.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me a chance to contribute to this particular motion. The issue before us, Madam Speaker, of the amendment of this Constitution is a discussion that has been ongoing for a long time, Madam Speaker. And when we were doing our campaigns as a Kenya Kwanza government, we said that there was no need to go for a referendum to put the things that we felt needed to be corrected in the Constitution, that those particular issues that needed to be corrected in the referendum could be done through Parliament. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I'm very happy that this matter is now appearing before us. It's now time for us to debate. Even, Madam Speaker, on the issue that had been said earlier and the confusion that was here earlier on the leader of majority and leader of minority, Madam Speaker, are some of the issues that we're saying. That let us set up the office of leader of opposition in the Constitution. So that, Madam Speaker, as I have said this here before, when the minister...
Honorable members, the honorable member for Molo shall be heard in silence. And the matter that you are bringing up had already been concluded.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I really want to implore on our minority side that as ruled, this is a house of order and you're on the next order. Madam Speaker, I look forward to that time when we are talking about the budget, when you're reading the budget for 2023-2024, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, order, order, honorable members. Order, honorable Buyu. Honorable Junet, take your seat. Please take your seat, Honorable Junet. Honorable Minority Leader, please take your seat. Honorable members, I am not going to order number 12 because it has already been concluded. We are in order number 13, and I gave the opportunity to the member for Molo. Honorable member for Molo, please proceed with debate.
Madam Speaker, the issue that you're talking about, the office of leader of opposition, is even what you're facing here, Madam Speaker.
Point of order, Madam Speaker, on quorum. Point of order. Point of order, Madam Speaker. Give me the mic. Give me the mic.
Honorable members, I have a point of order from the Honorable Kagusha.
Madam Speaker, I stand on standing order number 35, and I realize we do not have quorum to conduct any business in this house. So, Madam Speaker, I beg that we suspend this debate since we have no quorum in this house. Put the question, Madam Speaker. Put the question, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, clearly we have no quorum, and I order that the bell be rung for 10 minutes, honorable members.
wish to challenge chairpersons and members of the various committees. 60 days as provided for by the standing orders is 60 days. I hope we can get to a point where when a Kenyan submits their petition before the Senate, that they know that in 60 days' time, a maximum of 60 days, they'll have a report before them and something to consider. I therefore urge committees to consider these petitions. I also urge the Larson Committee to take action on this matter where standing committees exceed stipulated timelines. I've said this on petitions, I've said this on public vetting as well, Mr. Speaker. With respect to statements, there have been numerous statements sought pursuant to Standing Order number 53 and a good number committed to committees for consideration pursuant to Standing Order number 52-3. I continue to urge respective committees to expedite the consideration of statements and tabled reports pursuant to the standing orders. Number 10, Mr. Speaker, over and above the statements and petitions under consideration, which have highlighted a number of issues affecting our constituents, I encourage senators and respective standing committees to identify and come up with the legislative interventions that will be converted into bills. On statements, Mr. Speaker, there's a comment that I'd wish to make, and I wish I could say this when we have majority of the senators. We are sworn in as, yes, we represent specific constituencies, but many times I see statements be presented before us that are of an extremely narrow nature, narrow in the sense that even on a problem that affects the entire country, a senator is only interested in saying, please let me have the answers only for a particular county. I think because this is the upper house, Mr. Speaker, on many occasions, actually we have sworn to defend and protect the Constitution. We are senators of the Republic of Kenya. If you're presenting before the Senate a particular statement, Mr. Speaker, and you know that that particular problem or challenge that you want addressed affects more than one county, Mr. Speaker, there is no harm in seeking for the statement and perhaps drafting it in a better way that reflects your standing as a senator of the Republic of Kenya, as opposed to a particular county and saying, oh, I wish to know there's a chief in a particular region. You know, Mr. Speaker, we are slowly moving out of that habit. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I do recall that back in the day, in my very first days in the Senate, statements have really evolved. It was not unusual to find statements on people wanting a chief transferred, a sub-location which has done this or the other. You still find occasionally one or two members who would make that request, unless the matter is of great national importance and you feel that in your own way you cannot address it as a senator. That's a point that you bring a local matter to the floor of a Senate. Otherwise, most of the time, we borrow from the challenges that are in our specific county, but seek a solution that will solve the problem across the country. That's the attitude which I wish to request colleague senators to adopt, Mr. Speaker. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to request for patience and understanding of all senators and the country as the Senate leadership engages to resolve on the matter of change in the minority party leadership. Let us look beyond our differences in service to the people of Kenya. I hope we can quickly put this matter to rest as we agreed during the leaders' meeting that we had this morning, Mr. Speaker. I thank you and hereby lay the statement of the table on the table of the Senate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Majority Leader. All the statements that came under Standing Order 53-1 stands committed to the respective standing committees of the Senate. Next order.
Order number 9, the County Vocational Education and Training Bill, Senate Bills number 3 of 2022, second reading.
Is the move of the motion around? Senator Moses Kajwang? Sorry? Okay. He is not around, so we defer that motion to the next sitting. Next order.
Order number 10, the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 5 of 2022, second reading.
Senator Danson Mungatana, are you ready?
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to move this bill and have it read second reading. Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 5 of 2022, seeks in the memorandum of that bill to achieve certain goals. Mr. Speaker, just so that honorable senators who are following from inside and outside the chamber can understand.
Sorry, Senator Mgatana, you start that you seek to move the second reading.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I thought I did that.
Can you?
But I can do again. Mr. Speaker, I wish to move for second reading
The Parliamentary
the
Powers.
Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 5 of 2022. I did say that, Mr. Speaker.
You did. It's okay.
I think some of these people are not listening and misleading the chair. He had me, yes.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to lay the foundation why we needed to have this bill and amend the Powers and Privileges Act so that those colleagues of mine who are following this debate from inside and outside the House can follow. Mr. Speaker, this bill seeks to enhance the powers that Senate has over its decisions, over its resolutions, as opposed to the powers that Senate has over its decisions which are passed into law. Mr. Speaker, all the Constitution, what has been happening with all bills, we do a first reading, we then do a second reading, we do a third reading, and then, Mr. Speaker, it is taken to the President and it becomes law. Once it is assented by the President, civil servants, members of the executive, they all take this attitude, Mr. Speaker, that a law is a law and it is binding. So a law always has consequences. If you don't do this, then this will happen to you. If you are a member of the executive or you are a civil servant that supports the execution of the laws that we have passed in this Senate, ordinarily, Mr. Speaker, they have a fear of the compulsion of the law that we pass here. Mr. Speaker, when we come to decisions of this House through motions, Mr. Speaker, as opposed to decisions of this House through bills, the attitude is different. When the Senate pronounces itself here, and not only the Senate, Mr. Speaker, even the National Assembly, when they pass a motion, the attitude of the executive is that that is merely persuasive. It does not have compulsion of the law. So what has happened is, senators here, Mr. Speaker, they debate, they come to an agreement as a House that this is the decision, this is the resolution of the House. All of us, we agree as a Senate that this motion be passed. But Mr. Speaker, after that, the process that happens is that the clerk of the Senate would ordinarily then write to the relevant department of the government to inform them that there is a decision by the Senate, there is a resolution by the Senate that this and this be done as far as a motion is concerned. So, Mr. Speaker, there are various motions that we have passed, and I have also moved a motion here in this House, in this session, and we've been able to pass it and the clerk has followed up with the necessary action. But Mr. Speaker, the attitude of the civil service, the attitude of the executive has been and continues to be that if it is a motion that is passed by the House, it is not compulsory to follow it. It's a persuasion, maybe a strong persuasion. So, Mr. Speaker, what this bill seeks to change is that attitude. Mr. Speaker, I've had the fortune of serving in the executive, and I know from experience what I'm talking about. That when Parliament has passed a law and it has been assented by the President, we take it very seriously. We used to take it very seriously, and that attitude continues. But, Mr. Speaker, when Parliament passes a motion, we merely note it and say that it's a strong persuasion from the floor of the House, but it has no compulsion. It has no binding power. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill seeks to change by introducing a law that will make it now compulsory for members of the executive and generally civil service that, Mr. Speaker, when a resolution of the House is passed here, then it must be implemented. Mr. Speaker, we have created a mechanism under this bill of timely feedback on the resolutions that are passed by this House. Mr. Speaker, the clerk of the Senate is now required, when we make this to be law, when we pass this to be law, to write to the relevant government department within a time limit of 7 days to inform them that the House has passed this resolution, and it is in this bill who is named as a responsible officer. That responsible officer will be required to take action on the resolution that has been passed by this Senate within 60 days. Mr. Speaker, you can see that this bill is good because it is enhancing the role of the Senate. It is enhancing what Senate can do. It is also creating consequences for those who will fail to carry out and execute the resolutions of the House through motions. Mr. Speaker, what is the consequence of a responsible officer who fails to effect the resolutions? Mr. Speaker, normally what has been happening is that we have been condemning, we have been taking a dim light view of those people who are supposed to give effect to resolutions of this House. But, Mr. Speaker, if it is a motion and there are no consequences, what happens is beyond the condemnations that we make, it just lapses into no effect. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill is trying to correct that, is trying to correct and to therefore make effective the resolutions of this House. It is trying to fight for our space within the power structure so that instead of bringing a bill, and everybody knows how these processes of a bill are, they are long. You have to have a first reading. Mr. Speaker, you have to go and face the committee. You have to explain to them. The committee then will have 60 days to do a report, and then they will have to table the report. Mr. Speaker, then you have to move the bill, and then that bill will have to be debated, Mr. Speaker. When that bill is debated, it has to come back again for third reading, Mr. Speaker, and amendments are brought. So it's a long process. But sometimes it is so urgent to have a resolution of this House, and we cannot take that long when we are doing a motion. A motion will be speaking to an issue, a specific issue, and once the House has resolved that issue, then it will be now mandatory within the time limitations that we have created in this bill to make sure that that bill is given effect. Now, the attitude that, oh, that's just a motion by the House, that is just a persuasion, will come to an end. Responsible officers will face consequences, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what are the consequences that we are proposing in this bill? The consequences are that if a resolution of this House has been made, and we have said, for example, I have seen a bill here for provision for institution of measures to curb incessant high electricity costs, which is pending, that is being brought by the Honorable Senator Chute. Mr. Speaker, once we pass this bill and this law now is effective, it will mean that the responsible officers will have to effect what the resolution of this House is saying. And they have 60 days to do that. And if they don't bring a status report to show that this is how far we have gone in terms of compliance with the direction of the Senate, then, Mr. Speaker, if they don't do that, the responsible officer will be liable to paying a fine of 500,000 shillings, Kenya shillings, or in default, he will be liable, she will be liable to paying to a 6 months jail term. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill, Mr. Speaker, is as short as that. We are imposing statutory obligations on officers of government so that they can do what they need to do. House. They will be taking an interest in everything that is happening here, so that if it is a motion that is touching on their department, Mr. Speaker, they will be able to execute these motions. We are going to move away from the old era where, Mr. Speaker, people used to just say motions are but persuasions of the House, but we will be waiting for the law. In fact, Mr. Speaker, in those olden days, when we were a bit younger, and in the other house, when we move motions and we pass them, and we go to have them executed by departments of government, they will tell them, we will start, we will try, but why don't you bring a law? So it used to be the habit that you pass a motion and then you start the process of creating an amendment to the law or bringing a fresh bill, which was very tiring and very time-consuming. Mr. Speaker, what we are saying is that with this bill coming into law, this is going to change the way we are moving in this House. Mr. Speaker, Clause 4 of this amendment is proposing to insert a new part called Clause 4A to the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act to provide for reports on action taken on parliamentary resolutions. So, Mr. Speaker, Clause 4 captures what I've been talking about. It goes on to define who is a responsible officer and to whom, as I've said, a resolution of this House is directed at. Mr. Speaker, the new part 4A will mandate the clerk to move within 7 days to give the decision of the Senate as a resolution through a motion to the responsible officer. Mr. Speaker, the new Clause 4A will be requiring a report, a status report on the implementation of the resolution to the relevant committee within 60 days, Mr. Speaker. And it actually goes clearly to set out what kind of particulars are required in this report, the status report. So the responsible officer doesn't just write what he wants. He will be required within the arms of this law that I am proposing, Mr. Speaker, to state clearly all the information that we have sought and to state clearly the way that they have implemented to state clearly the measures they have taken. It also allows, Mr. Speaker, for extension of time. So if the responsible officer comes and say, in this electricity cost issue that is being proposed by the Honorable Senator Mohammed Chute, that we have done this much so far, but we require time to, they are reporting now to the Committee of Energy. Then, Mr. Speaker, this law provides for that. So it's not a punitive law, but it is changing what has been to the new era, Mr. Speaker, to deal with resolutions of this House. Mr. Speaker, this particular law is a good law, and I'm urging fellow senators to support this. To support this because it is necessary for the Senate to get its space. I argued here yesterday that power is something that does not allow for vacuum. If we surrender our power, for example, to the executive will continue to claw away on our powers. And Mr. Speaker, this is a reality because the executive, through its cabinet secretaries, they have this attitude of creating delegated legislations and rules that sometimes even kill the entire intent of the bill from which they are creating the regulations. So, Mr. Speaker, what we are saying is that that is our power as a Senate. If we allow the executive to get away with it, they will claw on it. And I also argued yesterday, Mr. Speaker, that if we allow the judiciary to micromanage the Senate, and we say nothing about it, they will also claw away on our power as a Senate. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying in this bill, we are trying to increase our space, to increase our power, not only to limit ourselves to legislation, to have compulsion of law, but we are also saying, Mr. Speaker, now resolutions of this House through motions, Mr. Speaker, will have power, compulsion, that officers of government will take them very seriously. And Mr. Speaker, I believe that this is good for the Senate, and I urge my colleagues who are listening and following inside and out to support this bill so that we can increase our space, we can increase the effectiveness of this Senate as we continue to execute our mandate elected by the people to come and do it here. Mr. Speaker, before I sit down and take my seat, I wanted to give my thanks to the JLAC, our Justice and Legal Committee. Mr. Speaker, under the chairmanship of Wakili Hillary, they really put their time. You can see from their report, Mr. Speaker, that they took their time to look at even High Court decisions. And Mr. Speaker, the decisions that had sort of removed some sections of this law, of Powers and Privileges Act, they advised on things that need to be improved within this bill. I am grateful for the meetings they have sat and the work they did, the processing of this. I'm losing my mic. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to give thanks to the committee, the JLAC committee, the Justice and Legal Committee, for the work they did. I am very happy with the comments they made in their reports. And, Mr. Speaker, their comments have made this bill, the amendment bill, to be even richer. So, Mr. Speaker, I record my thanks to the chairman and the committee, and I beg that this bill, to move this bill to be read a second time. Mr. Speaker, I am asking my colleague, the Senator Cherargei, to second this bill. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the onset, I want to congratulate Senator Danson Munkatana for this wonderful bill. I think legislation is a continuous process to improve our efficiency and effectiveness in terms of our duty, the cardinal duty. And you know, Mr. Speaker, as the Constitution says, we derive our authority from the people. And that authority, universal suffrage, was exercised in the last general election, and that is we are here. So I want to thank him. I can see he still has the same energy. When we were growing up, we used to watch him, very vibrant. And that vibrancy has never left him. We used to be called Mulamwamba. I don't know, Mr. Speaker, whether he still eats crocodiles, but maybe he can tell us in camera when we are in your office having tea.
Did you say Mura?
Mulamwamba.
Mwamba?
Yes. Mulamwamba, sorry. the crocodile eater. So he's done an exceptional work, Mr. Speaker. And I think this is important, Mr. Speaker, and congratulate him. This bill, Mr. Speaker, is a straightforward bill. I remember there was a time, Mr. Speaker, in the last session where we are trying to come up with committee of implementation. I note that National Assembly has committee on implementation, Mr. Speaker, and therefore to follow up on some of the resolutions, Mr. Speaker. As has been said, and I note the change of speakership on the seat, Senator Wakili Hilary Sigei, the distinguished senator of Bomet, and my lawyer on record on other matters. So, Mr. Speaker, what I was just saying is that sometimes the only thing that has a binding effect is the legislation, because we put some of the consequences that if you fail to follow, it becomes a problem, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill tries to enrich the role that has been, Mr. Speaker. When you look under Article 115 of the Constitution, on 117, sorry, of the Constitution, it talks about powers and privileges and immunities that we get as Parliament, Mr. Speaker. There shall be freedom of speech and debate in Parliament. Number 2, Parliament may, for the purposes of the orderly and effective discharge of the business of Parliament, provide for the powers, privileges, and immunities of Parliament, its committees, the leader of majority party, the leader of the minority party, the chairpersons of the committees and members. So, Mr. Speaker, this genesis of the power that Senator Danson Munkatana is trying to derive from is derived under the Constitution under Article 117. Because we are given the power to legislate, Mr. Speaker. This one tries to ensure that resolutions, because the only binding effect, Mr. Speaker, is only on legislation. But when the committee goes and sits about a statement, there are resolutions, Mr. Speaker, that are made by the committee. When there is a motion, there is a resolution when they adopt a motion on the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker. There is other matters that we adopt in the House, Mr. Speaker. Many reports and messages that are adopted in the House. But at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, no one asks about it. They get a dust. There is a famous, Mr. Speaker, a famous saying in this country that the reports are gathering dust somewhere in some of the offices, Mr. Speaker. This bill will ensure that is cured, Mr. Speaker, because the definition of responsible officer in ensuring. So, when, Mr. Speaker, for example, when we pass a resolution or adopt a report, in the last session we adopted a report on land historical injustice against the Talai community in Nandi and across the Kenya. For example, in that report, when I was a chair, there was a number of issues that we raised under Talai and their forceful eviction, Mr. Speaker, from Nandi and be taken to other parts, including Kericho and part of Luo Nyanza, Mr. Speaker. And that report we did recommend that the National Land Commission will issue orders of resurveying and providing alternative land and compensation. No one followed. We went ahead, Mr. Speaker, and said there should be affirmative action to ensure that the Talai community that have settled somewhere in Talai, near my place, Sironoi, Mr. Speaker, they must be given alternative land. National Commission was directed, Mr. Speaker, that the county government and national government should take affirmative action of employing some of the children and sons of Talai community, Mr. Speaker. That one was never done. Another issue, Mr. Speaker, on that report, because I'm just using an example so that members can get me, is that mutual legal assistance be provided by the national government through the Attorney General's office to pursue their justice the way some of the Mau Mau went into innings of London, Mr. Speaker. It was never done. Why? Because it was resolved, it was adopted. But there is no reporting mechanism to tell this House that on the issue of land, alternative land for Talai, the National Land Commission has done, has allocated land, the Talai has settled. There is no reporting mechanism, Mr. Speaker. Now, this law is trying to be prescriptive, Mr. Speaker. If today we say every child that goes to ECD there must be a school feeding program for ECD if a motion is brought, Mr. Speaker. That motion, if there are resolutions, they should be in the Education Committee, Mr. Speaker, through the clerk, should be able to report back to the House and tell the House all ECD centers across the country in 47 counties are feeding daily, and therefore they are not being threatened with hunger, and ensure attendance in the classroom, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you have heard the President is working on cleaning of Nairobi River, among others in the country, and the Nairobi River Commission has been formed. And I can see my friend, the famous one, Ferdinand Waititu, is part of that commission, Mr. Speaker. That cleaning exercise is done. How do we ensure that the Committee on Lands, Environment, and Natural Resources reports back and ensure that the executive has cleaned Nairobi River, Mr. Speaker? So this bill that my brother, Senator Danson Mungatana, is trying to do is prescription. It is being prescriptive, Mr. Speaker, in reporting mechanism, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it is even implementation. Because, Mr. Speaker, if today we say maybe there are people who have been the relevant public officer to whom a resolution or a report of a House or Committee of Parliament is submitted in accordance with this Act. Clause number 23B, the clerk of the relevant House, which under Article 93, you know, Parliament is both the Senate and the National Assembly, within 7 days of a resolution of the House, and the House means both, as explained by Article 9, or the tabling of a report of the Committee of the House, convey the resolution or a copy of the report, as the case may be, to the responsible officer under whose portfolio the implementation, resolution, or recommendation of the committee falls, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, what does that mean? It means if there is implementation, it must be submitted to us, and the clerk, Mr. Speaker, after the resolutions has been done, our clerks, some of them are on table office, and I know the seniority. Some of them have been with us for long. I can see the others who are new, Mr. Speaker, and they are learning the ropes. Mr. Speaker, when we resolve, we give it to the clerks to transmit. For example, if it is about resettlement, for example, we now, let me use the Land Historical Injustice Report. We adopt, and then we transmit to the AG a copy. We transmit to the National Land Commission a copy. That is now the work of the clerk. And that is why we have said the responsible officer is what the report has been directed to do, including the reports that I remember, Mr. Speaker, since you are also the chairperson of JLAC, we were doing a report on extrajudicial killings. There was a report. Maybe there is an obligation of the DCIO, of DPP. If, for example, Mr. Speaker, through your committee of JLAC, you direct the DPP Nurdin Aji to prosecute individuals who have been accused of extrajudicial killings, Mr. Speaker. And it is very sad. We went and visited somewhere in Kwale, Mr. Speaker, and in that meeting, only women came. I was shocked. I was asking my secretariat, why are women in Kwale only attending this meeting? They told me, Chairman, what you know is that the husbands and the sons of these women of Kwale, because we were in Kwale, Mr. Speaker, they have been killed in unexplained circumstances. So if we have to, for example, another issue I wanted to give so that colleagues can get what we are driving at, is the issue of a collapse of Solai Dam, where many Kenyans were killed. And millions of liters travel a number of kilometers, Mr. Speaker, and many homes were swept away. The quality of soil was swept away, Mr. Speaker, and many people died. Others were maimed. Others are living with trauma. And at that time when we were investigating, Mr. Speaker, and our chief, I don't want to give, was it called Chief Kiragu, decided to sign an indemnity form from some individuals so that they don't move to court. It is after this committee that intervened that the people of Solai, Mr. Speaker, and through my committee then, that the perpetrators of criminal negligence that caused the collapse Solai Dam in Nakuru County, Mr. Speaker, were prosecuted by DPP because they were trying to negotiate out of court, yet there was a criminal liability on that matter, Mr. Speaker. Even up to today, I remember we visited them, Mr. Speaker. There is no mechanism of ensuring that the people who suffered, either they lost their families in Solai Dam tragedy, whether they were given land, whether there was land reclamation, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, at that time, a lot of topsoil was swept. What does that mean? Most of the land around Solai is now barren. There must be land restoration and reclamation in that area. Number two, there was also that families that lost their loved ones. There were also building of houses by Kenya Red Cross, Mr. Speaker, and the government and compensation. No one is doing follow-up. If we pass this law, my brothers, my colleagues, sisters and brothers on the floor of the House, we would have told Kenyans, and you know, Mr. Speaker, we are politicians. You go, well, yes, we passed. For example, my Talai people normally ask me that thing, what happened? You pass, how do you follow it is implemented? So to ensure, we also ensure we deliver. Because when you go back to Talai, Mr. Speaker, and tell them, I have given you land, and there's a reporting mechanisms, they will appreciate the fact that the parliament is doing, Mr. Speaker. I can see my friends, yesterday the issue of CBC came, and I saw it was in headline in some of the newspapers. The headlines were, stop CBC if you cannot fix it. So there was a resolution by National Assembly discussing CBC. Is there a mechanism of following up with government to ensure that the resolutions that were made by the National Assembly were followed, Mr. Speaker? So we must, in all essence, what we mean in upshot, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure there is reporting mechanisms in terms of it, Mr. Speaker. And then, Mr. Speaker, another point that I wanted to make is clause 23C, a responsible officer who fails to comply with section 23B commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine of not exceeding 500,000 or imprisonment for a term not 6 months or to both. And that is important. So, for example, Mr. Speaker, if today I had Sex for Work that was broadcast by BBC, and it is another story in Kericho, where allegations are facing James Findlay and a number of multinational tea estates in Kericho County. And I think it is a rampant issue within estates across the country, including Nandi and Bomet, and even here in Mount Kenya, Mr. Speaker. The Committee of JLAC, again, because as human rights issue is sexual offense and sexual violence, can order that the DPP prosecutes the alleged perpetrators of sex for work in that issue of Kericho James Findlay, Mr. Speaker. But the question is, how will JLAC and Parliament track that those alleged individuals and perpetrators are taken to face the full force of the law? It is hard because we don't have a reporting mechanisms. We don't have an obligation. And if today you order DPP, and you know, I normally see people are alleging that DPP is leaving individuals who are alleged of corruption, and my brothers in Azimio and Kenya lands normally allude to that fact. The Constitution is very clear. In as much as the DPP on its own motion can start investigations, Mr. Speaker, it does not take the power of Parliament, because it says Parliament can summon or invite anyone, Mr. Speaker. If today we direct DPP as a Parliament or as a Senate to arrest perpetrators of sex for work in the alleged scandal of James Findlay, and where women have been affected by that issue, Mr. Speaker, if the DPP declines to follow the order, what happens? The law is very clear. He is taking personal responsibility of that officer. And even when you see at powers and privileges, Mr. Speaker, when we summon a witness, like I'm not saying Senator Amida is a witness, but if our witness fails to show up, the law provides that we fine from their own money 500,000 or under punitive. And in fact, it's specific that the IG must look for that witness and bring that witness before the House, Mr. Speaker. So what we are just saying, Mr. Speaker, in a nutshell, is that we are now neat. We want neatness. We don't want, when we go to wananchi, we tell them, hiyo kitu tulipitisha bunge tu. So, Mr. Speaker, so I think this is important, but now I will be, when we will discuss with the mover of the motion, Senator Mungatana, we increase, because you cannot, you know, Mr. Speaker, You cannot fine a CS 500,000. That's like chicken change, Mr. Speaker. We need to make it punitive, even up to 5 million. We need to enhance, even up to 3 years, and even include another punitive that if you fail, Mr. Speaker, if you are a CS, for example, we've passed a vote of no confidence. The motion is brought. This should form part of the serious, because this is, you are defying the House, Mr. Speaker. And the status of the House of Parliament is the High Court. You are defying an order of the court, Mr. Speaker. And you and me know the consequences of defying a court order, Mr. Speaker. So we must be very punitive. If, for example, the clerk, being Jenga here, today processes and takes, for example, to a National Land Commission, and the chairperson of National Commission ignores, we must make it painful and punitive to be deterrent to officers who do not follow the orders of Parliament, which has the same status, Mr. Speaker. I'm not saying Jenga is a clerk, but he's a clerk at the table office because we have our substantive clerk. I'm saving him the trouble, Mr. Speaker, so that people might not misinterpret. But maybe he will grow old enough to become one. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to ensure that we enhance. Finally, Mr. Speaker, so we need to enhance the money and ensure that exceed 6 months, for example, Mr. Speaker, at least we enhance. And then finally, where a response is sought on the implementation of more than one resolution, the relevant speaker might direct that the responsible officer submits a single report on the status of implementation of those resolutions. And that means just progress report. And you remember the president also had an obligation of tabling some of the reports before the House during SONA, or State of the Nation address. Therefore, this part does not limit the power of Parliament to require information from, in accordance with the Constitution or any other law. So in as much as we are asking DPP to prosecute perpetrators of extrajudicial killings, it does not limit our power to go and demand more information from him or any other law, because we are being given, and as Article 117 of the Constitution is very crystal clear that the powers that we are trying to ensure we put in order. And Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, this is a 2010 Constitution. The Constitution keeps growing. It keeps improving. There are many court decisions that will always affect the way we implement our Constitution, Mr. Speaker, and ensure we come up with legislative and policy intervention at any given point, Mr. Speaker. So going into the future, Mr. Speaker, I want to call upon our colleagues to support this bill, Mr. Speaker. This is a very straightforward bill. In fact, it's very straightforward. It's just more of a procedural bill. I hope our brothers and sisters in the National Assembly will not be in any way introduce the issue of money bill. And I remember we went to Supreme Court on the issue of money bill. I don't see anything why the National Assembly should delay our bill. And in fact, in my proposal, Mr. Speaker, when we appeared before Milimani High Court, before Justice Weldon Korir, during my tenure, when I used to serve in your chair, one of the things we sought was signing of a concurrent certificate by all speakers, the Speaker of the Senate and the Speaker of the National Assembly. You know, Senate is the upper house. I hope everybody is aware of that. So we need them to sign a concurrent certificate to show that the bill has been passed by both houses. And by the way, in future, Mr. Speaker, and you sit in Senate Business Committee, you should even request the President that when they are assenting to any bill of Parliament, it should be attached with a concurrent certificate from both houses, so that we run away from the ugly scenes that we saw in the last session, where we are saying we have passed the bill, National Assembly have passed alone, and they have taken for assent without the concurrence of both houses, Mr. Speaker. So I hope our colleagues in the National Assembly are watching this, and they should be ready, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, I heard a lot. I would have even submitted for the next 3 hours. But because I appreciate that most of my colleagues want to give their unique input, I wish to second and say that I'm happy to see this bill into full fruition and the benefits of Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Congratulate on my brother. I think so that, Mr. Speaker, you know, hunting down a crocodile is illegal in Kenya under KOWS. So the only gift I look for him is maybe a cow, Mr. Speaker, because that's respect in our culture. Thank you very much, and congratulations, Senator Danson Mungatano.
Thank you very much, Senator Cherargei, for seconding this motion. And honorable senators, I now propose the question that the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 5 of 2022, be now read a second time. I call upon, I've seen the Honorable Senator from Nyeri, Honorable Wamatinga Wahome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I want also to start by saying that I like to support and congratulations, Senator Mgatana, for that timely bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, optimization of processes, optimization and evaluation of processes are only possible if a feedback mechanism is created. For any efficient system to learn, Mr. Speaker, it is important to set a 360 degrees feedback mechanism. As it has been ably prosecuted before this House, there comes a time when one feels like most of the resolutions, the bills and things that are passed in this House, there is no laid down mechanism to have a follow-up on where they are, at what stage, and to know exactly what may be transpired and prevented them from happening. Therefore, putting in place a mechanism that will ensure that the work done in this House, the resolutions passed, the bills passed, we have a way to follow up and to know who is to give us the feedback, or to know which office to follow up with will be very, very important. I therefore think that the bill that Honorable Senator Mgatana has presented in this House is going to cure that gap, is going to seal that leakage, that we may discuss things here. Resolutions have been passed, and Senator Shelekai has mentioned about the Mau Mau. It was passed and agreed, but there is no mechanism to fall back what transpired. If we only debate, pass, and we do not have any mechanism which sets time frame and even says who shall do what in what time frame, then most of the work that we'll be doing here will end up being wastage of taxpayers' money, which will mean that we will be turning around in circles without moving forward. And as has been stated, the Constitution of Kenya, promulgated in 2010, it is not static. The laws that have been passed so far, they are not static. Today's situation requires that we move with speed, because we're living in changing times where we need to look at things the way they are and to address them. And we need, most importantly, to have a mechanism that will be feeding back so that we know the stopgap measures that need to be put in place, including bills and laws that need to be amended. I therefore think that it is very, very important that we support this bill, that we pass it, so that we'll create an avenue, an infrastructure that will enable a reporting back mechanism that will enable us to continue with our work, including modifying, implementing where we need to, so that we can move this country forward. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'd like to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wamatinga. Honorable Senator Wakoli Wafula.
Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa nafasi hii ningependa kuunga mkono na kushukuru yale ambayo wakili Senator Mgatana amewasilisha, na kwamba nimeona ni kama mazoea viongozi wa Afrika kuwa na ugumu wa kutekeleza majukumu yao pasipo shinikizo za kisheria, na zaidi ya hapo kupewa adhabu kali. Tumekuwa katika kamati mbalimbali ambazo kwazo tumeona kaunti zinakosa kujukumika kulipa mishahara, kulipa kodi, kulipa halmashauri za afya, kulipa watendakazi ama wanakandarasi, na haya yote yataweza tu kupata matibabu iwapo sheria ambayo ndugu yangu seneta analeta itaweza kufanya kazi. Pale ambapo iwapo kaunti imepewa pesa za mishahara, yule anayejukumika kulipa mishahara anapokosa kulipa ushuru, lazima apate kichapo cha mbwa mdomo juu.
pale ambapo wanakandarasi wamepewa kazi ya kufanya kwa mujibu wa miaka ama muda fulani, wakose kufanya na wapate pesa. Sheria iwepo vile vile wao pia wajukumike kwa sababu wamepunja pesa ya mtozaji ushuru. Kwa hayo mengi, ningependa kuunga mkono hoja ya wakili Senator Mungatana, na vile vile kabla sijasahau, katika majukumu ya serikali kulikuwa na 30% ya vijana kupata kandarasi, wanawake walemavu. Ukichunguza katika kaunti na hivi katika serikali, hayo yote yamesaulika kwa sababu yale mapendekezo ambayo yako katika vitabu vya serikali ni kama hekaya za bunwasi. Lakini wapo sheria kama hii itapitishwa na tupitishe katika kamati zetu na katika bunge la Senate, wale ambao wanahusika wasipofanya hivyo vile vile watapata adhabu kali, na wawe mfano kwa wengine ambayo hudhani kwamba uongozi ni wa milele. Lazima wajue kwamba uongozi ni kama mapito na ni muhimu kutenda wema na kwenda zetu. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Senator. I must confess that Kiswahili chako ni sanifu. And I think the House will learn a lot by your contributions on that particular language of Kiswahili. Honorable Senator Mandago.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support a bill by Senator Mungatana. Mr. Speaker, this bill will cure the inefficiencies and effectiveness that I've witnessed in the resolutions that have been made by the House, Mr. Speaker, and there is no follow-up action from the executive or the concerned officers, Mr. Speaker. Considering the number of government institutions that we have to engage as a House, Mr. Speaker, and considering, Mr. Speaker, for example, the President, the number of ministries, semi-autonomous government agencies that it needs to supervise, Mr. Speaker, I think this bill, Mr. Speaker, will not only help this House to ensure that the resolutions are followed up with action, Mr. Speaker, but it will also help the executive in the execution of their plans, because civil servants, heads of government institutions, will have no place to hide because the law will catch up with them, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I therefore want to congratulate the Senator for Tana River, Senator Mungatana, for bringing up this bill. Mr. Speaker, from my experience in my previous service, county assemblies would also pass motions. They would come to your desk. You would mark to relevant officers for execution. But because of the exigencies of work, you might not be in a position to remember all motions that have been passed and moved for action, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, some decisions, some actions that ought to have been taken would lapse without your knowledge, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill will not only cure that, and I hope, Mr. Speaker, we shall also find a way of making sure that the same is replicated in counties so that also heads of departments in counties can be taken to account whenever resolutions of motions of county assemblies are also not followed up with the requisite action, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill will not only restate the position of this House in terms of decision-making in the country, Mr. Speaker, and the trust Kenyans have given to this House, but it will also make government services, emergency responses required, Mr. Speaker, get the due attention that is required by the respective departments, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I therefore support this bill and will, as a colleague, want to assure Senator Mungatana that we shall make sure that this bill goes through, and we would want to see the results in terms of increase in efficiency in service delivery in government within the period that the bill will have been passed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Jackson Mandago. And as I call upon the mover to reply, I must, for the benefit of the Right Honorable Senator Mungatana, indicated that when this bill was brought before our committee, which I chair, it made the members appreciate the bill and the desire to ensure that there is a follow-up on the resolutions of this House, on the decisions of the committees and of the House, in terms of ensuring that there is a mechanism within which implementation can be enforced. And secondly, the unique feature of punishing the authority or the person in office or a chairperson of an entity. That is one of the reasons why the committee agreed that we must define who is the person in authority, such that if for summons which has been issued and there is non-compliance, we know the target person to go for, and the punitive provision in terms of the inability to comply or to enforce the decisions of this committee. So even from the chair, I must say it is the right thing that the Honorable Senator Mugatana has done, and I now call upon you, Senator Mugatana, to reply.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank all my colleagues who have made contributions to this bill. Mr. Speaker, I want to start with you and let you know that before you took the stage, the chair, when I was moving this bill for second reading, I did acknowledge the industry and the work that the JLAC did, and I did mention you in name, Mr. Speaker, and I read your report, and I was grateful for the work that you have done. Mr. Speaker, being an old member, I appreciate really the work that other colleagues are putting towards success of legislation. And I did mention that, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the comments from the report of legal. And I want to thank you very much, now in person, the JLAC, for the way you handled this matter when it was being processed through your committee. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank Senator Cherargei for passionately seconding the second reading of this bill. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Cherargei actually gave live examples, and we all remember what happened in Solai Dam. Many people felt that justice was not carried, and yet the committee of this House had made certain directions. There was previous, before the passing of this bill, no responsible officer, nobody to push, nobody was facing any consequences for not following what the Senate committee had resolved. The Honorable Cherargei, Mr. Speaker, spoke about what they had resolved as Senate on the question of the Talai, which continues to hound us to date. And he says when he goes to his constituency, they are asking him, what happened? He says we passed, but there is no action as the people had said. With the passing of this bill, Mr. Speaker, this is going to be a thing of the past. I want to thank Senator Wamatinga. When he was contributing, Mr. Speaker, he made it clear that we need a 360-degree reporting mechanism so that when we come here and we debate on issues, we are not debating for the sake of debate. We are not here a house of talk. Mr. Speaker, we are passing resolutions that are going to be binding, and government officers are going to take us seriously. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for the Honorable Amatinga's observations and his support. I thank the Honorable Senator Wafula. Mr. Speaker, he stated that in this country, not just Kenya, but in Africa, people have a problem with following rules and regulations. And it is important for us to put consequences. Mr. Speaker, it was not lost to me that this bill, in the second reading, there has been a proposal that we make the consequences of failure to comply with resolutions even more stricter than what we have proposed in this bill. Mr. Speaker, we have proposed 500,000 as a punishment. In the alternative, we have proposed a 6 months jail term for those responsible officers who will not have obeyed the resolutions of this House or given them effect. Mr. Speaker, it has been proposed in this House that we should go as far as 3 years. We should go as far as 3 million. Because they say a chief, a cabinet secretary, a CS, if you charge them with, find them guilty and say it is 500,000, it was stated here in the second reading debate that is change, a small change for them, and they may not take it as seriously. Those observations, Mr. Speaker, I will take them, and Mr. Speaker, during the